So, everybody, welcome to our first session of our second founder boot camp called Angel NV, put on by Startup NV, an accelerator and incubator in the state of Nevada. I'm going to start with a couple of pieces of information about us and our webinar and our organization and what we do, and then we're going to turn it over to Stormie Andrews, who's going to be our speaker tonight. So hopefully, it'd be really cool if somebody in Las Vegas could step in front of the camera and give me a thumbs up that you guys are hearing me. Awesome, thank you. So I know that I'm not talking to no one. And I'm going to share a couple of slides to talk about what us and what our organization does, and then we'll turn it over to Stormie here in about 5 minutes. So first, I'd like to thank our sponsors. For all of you entrepreneurs out there, if you are in need of some corporate credit that doesn't require you personally guaranteeing anything, head on over to the link that you see up there at the Brex card. And not only will you be able to get a corporate card, assuming you qualify, but you'll also get $500 in your account if you sign up using our link there. So it's brex.com/startupnv. On the other side of the slide, you see Glassboard technology. For those of you who are investors and you use special purpose vehicles to do your investing, the easiest and lowest cost SPVs out there are on Glassboard technology. So you can reach them at Glassboard Tech. And of course, our awesome partners at the City of Las Vegas, who sponsor the space and a number of other things for us. So thanks to the folks at City of Las Vegas. So our mission at Startup NV is to help diversify the Nevada economy, and we do that by helping entrepreneurs grow their companies and raise capital. So we've got 3 priorities for on the company side, and that is to grow new companies from our non-university based economy, and then also help university startups when we can. And we want to help those folks grow from seed. We also help our economic development partners to import talent, if you will, from other places in the country and other places around the world to Nevada to start and grow their startups here. And then to help those companies scale through private and grant capital. Now, on the capital side, we work to create early stage capital funding within Nevada through this program, Angel NV. The other half of which we work with investors to teach them how to be angel investors, and we'll be investing $200,000 at least in one of the companies that's coming through this very program. So the other part of our mission is to recruit other funds to come into Nevada and to help create and smooth out our laws so that we can incentivize those kind of things to happen. And we do this through 6 programs, 3 on the founder side, 3 on the angel investor side. On the founder side, we have our incubator, Grow NV, our accelerator, Startup NV, which if you get into, you get a $50,000 investment from our accelerator. And then finally, this program, Angel NV, which is a founder boot camp that answers the basic questions over 12 sessions. How do you attract angel investors? What do you need to do to attract angel investing? And the first session of that is tonight. On the investor side, we have 3 funds: Fund NV, which is the investment fund that makes those $50,000 investments in Startup NV accelerator companies. Seed NV, which will be starting next year, which will make follow-on investments, larger follow-on investments into the companies that have already gotten investment from Fund NV and Angel NV, and just generally others in the community that are looking for larger rounds of funding in the middle 6-figure to low 7-figure range. And then Angel NV, the other half of this conference, where we actually go out and recruit at least 40 accredited investors, each of whom invests $5,000 into a fund. And that $200,000 fund or more, if we recruit more than 40 people, is invested in one of the companies that's participating in this program. Last year, we had 52 investors come to the boot camp. We raised $330,000. And instead of investing in one company, we invested in 3. Our process is pretty straightforward. We look for companies from the idea all the way through to scaling. And we've got our incubator program that focuses on the feasibility area of this chart. our accelerator company that focuses generally on the viability area of this chart. And then our seed fund focuses on companies that are exiting the viability stage and getting into the scalability stage to make investments there. So far, we've heard just about 700 companies pitch to us since we started this party in 2017. 52 companies now have come through the accelerator. 28 companies have been funded, and the number now is just over $70 million. This is as of the early part of the summer. So thanks everybody for coming out to our session tonight. And now we're going to transition over to a colleague of mine that I've known for several years. Stormie Andrews runs Yoco Loco. He's partnered with his partner Daryl Evans to run Yoco Loco, an agency, marketing agency in Las Vegas. There are marketing agencies, so clearly we think a lot of them. And Stormie has written several books on customer personas or buyer personas, along with just helping with lots and lots of general marketing issues that come up for their clients in Las Vegas and elsewhere throughout the country. So Stormie's today is going to talk to us about storytelling. So I'm really interested and anxious to hear what Stormie has to say. So thanks so much for coming out, Stormie, to tell us about storytelling. And I'm going to pass the baton to you and let you take it from here. So over to you, Stormie in Las Vegas.
I'll play a little video to give you a little bit about my background, and we'll get started. Does that work for you? Sure. Oh, that was pretty weak. Does that work for you? This is going to be participatory, okay? Let's do it again. Does that work for you? Yes. Okay, cool. Here's a little bit about me. 2010, Stormie Andrews co-founded Yoco Loco, an award-winning digital marketing agency located in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Since then, Yoco Loco has become the first HubSpot platinum agency partner in the entire state. Since the formation of Yoco Loco, he and his team have gone on to help organizations big and small generate millions in additional revenue. As a licensed practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, Stormie is continuously recognized as bringing a unique perspective and influence into the world of digital marketing. He's the creator of the world's best buyer persona system, member of the Forbes Agency Council, a frequent contributor to Forbes, recipient of the Member of the Year Award from the American Marketers Association, award-winning author, HubSpot certified trainer, and one of the top 50 tech visionaries as named by Intercom. Stormie has influenced thousands of marketers around the globe. He's often invited to speak at some of the largest conferences and is arguably one of the leading buyer persona experts and marketing strategists in his field. If you are ready to learn from one of the ranks and discover proven strategies of turning strangers into customers, then you're ready for Stormie Andrews. There you go. That's a little bit about me. And the book, my most recent book, is The World's Best Buyer Persona System. And I'm going to share with you some concepts in that book because the book was originally written for people looking to market their business. Well, I have found that screenwriters and writers have been using the book for their character development. So if you're going to write a story, today we're going to talk about the story you need to create before the story. Does that work? Come on, we've gone through this once already. Does that work? Yes. Okay, cool. So let me ask you a question. How did you get here today? How did you get to where you're at? It's not with a lot of traffic, but how did you get to where you're at as it pertains to your business? How'd you get here? You probably had an idea. Is that a fair statement at some point? Raise your hand if you had an idea. That started the journey that you're on, right? And then from the idea, maybe you built a prototype, or maybe you had to put pen and paper to come up with your concept. Can you resonate with so far? You had an idea, and then maybe you built a prototype. Are we all fair? Makes sense? And then from there, now they tell you, well, you know what? You need to go out and get some investors. Have you heard that story? Have you gotten your investors? Maybe, maybe not, right? But then you may ask, well, how do I do that? You know, you talk to your friends, you talk to your family, but how do I get investors? Is that, I mean, that's a question that a lot of people ask, especially when I'm dealing with startups. I'm dealing with a startup now that we're building out their story. So when they go get investors, the investors not only invest in the organization, but they want to invest in the organization. There's a big difference when you have investors lined up with a desire
to invest in what you are bringing to market. And it's not about facts and figures. It's not about I've got this and it does that and it's faster or whatever. It's about the story. Can you relate to that? Yeah, it's about the story. So they tell you to go create your story, and then you sit down and maybe you go create your story. You have scribbles on paper. Who's been here when you've been told to create a story or create a plan, and then once you have all this jotted down on paper, the paper ends up here because you just had a jumble mess. Can you relate? Show me your hands if you can relate. I don't know what I'm speaking to. If you can relate to that type of scenario. I see your hands like moving around. So here's the scenario. I get participation trophies. So there you go, because your hand had the most energy there. See, I don't play around here, right? But in reality, that's how you got here. You know what I mean? You started on this journey, and where's this journey going to take you? Now, here's where the fork in the road happens. Oftentimes, when organizations and companies go off kilter, is because they go and start in creating a story, and they create a story about themselves. They're thinking about themselves. So I've got this thing, and I've done this, and it does that. It's about me. But the investors or even your customers, the market, they don't want to hear the story about you. In essence, they want to know what you bring to the market that's going to help them. You see, they're listening to their own station. And what's the station that investors and customers, consumers of your goods and services are listening to? What's that radio station? WIIFM, right? There it is. And what does WIIFM stand for? What's in it for me? That's what they're thinking, right? They're thinking, what's in it for me? But then you're broadcasting on a station of WIIFU. What's in it for you? See, you gotta, don't go there to what's in it for you is when you're broadcasting on the station. So the scenario there, if your message is about you, you're missing the mark. Your message has to be about them. You got to spend time, energy, and effort figuring out as much as you can about them if you're going to build a story. You see, it's easy for someone to say, go build a story, and you start writing a narrative about all this other stuff. But if you make it about yourself, your story's going to bomb because you haven't put enough energy and effort about your audience. So where do you start? You start with character development. So let me ask you a question. By a show of hands, who in the room is at a pre-funding stage where you're looking for investors? Few of you. And who is looking to create a story for their goods and services, their business or their market? A few of you. And would you imagine that those are two different stories?
Yes.
Absolutely. There may be some overlap, but what's in it for your investor is a lot different than what's in it for the consumers of your goods and services, right? Makes a lot of sense. So the goal of character development is to make sure that when you put your messaging together, you don't have this wheel that's running with lots of nails at it. Because if you got nails, how is that wheel going to roll? Right? So I'm just going to give you a tool so this way you can pump up that timer and be a rock star. That's what it's all about, right? So this way, when you bring your product to market, you have the ability of being able to outsell, outgrow, and outsmart. And that's really what I'm excited about bringing into the market, is being is able to share a tool helping you to outsmart the other competitors that you're going to go up against, to outsmart others because you've spent a little bit more time just thinking about the fundamentals and putting those fundamentals into place. Does that make sense? You with me? So let's look at 3 areas that we have to think about as it pertains to what you're going to do. If we see this is a puzzle. And without the 3 pieces of the puzzle, your marketing strategy, your sales, your story is going to be incomplete. You got to have a documented journey. That's your story. That's your character development. That's your business plan. That's your strategy. That's an important component in terms of getting yourself to the next level. Your documented strategy helps you identify the tools and tactics that you need to execute. And then you got to have your definition of success, your KPIs. Does that make sense? You got to have all 3. You got to have all 3. What happens if you're missing one of the elements? Your documented strategy, by the way, is where your character development comes into, which is what allows you to have storytelling, whatever your story needs to be. So if you're in a scenario and in your story, your character development's documented strategy, the story becomes a tool and tactic to help you achieve what you want to achieve. And then the results, if the story help you achieve your goals, falls into the definition of success. So what happens if you're missing one of the 3 elements? What happens? Well, if you have a documented strategy, you have your definition of success, but you don't have the tools and tactics, I like to think that you're stuck in the mud. Because you know what? I know where I want to go. And I know where I'm supposed to get to. I just don't have the tools and tactics to get here. And when it comes to storytelling, that's a scenario where no one's listening. Why is no one listening? Because you're stuck in the mud. They're not there with you. What happens in a scenario if you have your tools and tactics, you've got your definition of success, but you don't have your documented strategy? On that type of scenario, I like to think of that person that wears the paper crown. You know, they think that, hey, I'm in charge, I've got this going, but in reality, it's a paper crown. In that scenario, you're basically out of your league and you're probably pitching to the wrong audience. You know, you're probably pitching to someone that isn't going to consume your goods and services, or you're pitching to investors that have no interest in investing in you because you haven't put the time, energy, and effort in figuring out who your audience is. What happens if you have the documented strategy, you've got the tools and tactics, and you're missing your KPIs? You've got these. What are those? Squirrels. And what do you think I mean by squirrels?
Scatter.
What is it?
Scatter.
Scatter, right? I was going to say give me a single clap, but the squirrels are the distractions that we run into. You see, when we don't have the elements, as a matter of fact, let me ask you a question. Who has ever had these squirrels, shiny objects, enter into your life? Only two of us? I was here to say, there's some untruthful people in this room because these squirrels are a problem. And here's a problem with squirrels. They have fun with you, right? When you start chasing that squirrel around, that distraction, they like it. Now you're frustrated, but then since they're having so much fun, they tell their friends about it. And then you got another distraction, another distraction, another distraction because you don't have it together. And what it leads to is this tactical approach to what you're doing. It's no different than me when I was throwing these chips around. Maybe one of them turns out to be that one that pays off, but oftentimes what happens if you have a pocket full of chips and you spend enough time in a casino? What happens when you leave the casino? Is it more likely that you're going to leave with more chips or less chips? Less, right? You don't want to be throwing money all over the place hoping something sticks, especially when it comes to your story. And that's why I'm taking you back to the basics as it pertains to the character development. Because if you haven't figured out the pain points, the issues, the struggles of who you want to be involved with your project, you've got a problem. Because the only person that your story is going to resonate with is your mom. What do moms say? Doesn't matter how bad the story is, but she's going to be like, baby, that's the greatest thing ever. And then we have this false sense of reality of thinking that everyone's going to feel the same way about what we have to bring to the table, the way our mom feels. Can you relate to that? That's what they do, right? You can relate to that. So we don't have that. So the character development is the documented strategy, and it starts with buyer persona. So when you have a buyer, when you don't have a buyer persona as that character development piece, unfortunately, what I find more times than not is that you end up with unpredictability. Unpredictability in terms of revenue and sales and all other aspects of your business is just unpredictable. So now when you have that unpredictability, that leads to a scenario to where your messaging becomes a little desperate or a little pushy because you're wanting to avoid that unpredictability and you don't want to be this guy, right? If you want to be this guy, I got nothing else for you, right? And if you don't want to be this guy, then the scenario is you're like, okay, I don't have this desperation in my messaging, I'll just burn cash. And that's not a recipe for success. With the right messaging, you should have predictability. You should have messaging that allows you to be trusted and profitable. Does that make sense there? Cool. Any questions so far? Cool, then I'm going to keep going, right? So that leads to the world's best buyer persona system. I did my own copy and paste. You can see art is not my first thing, right? So let's talk messaging. So who are your best prospects that are going to invest in your project? Who are the best prospects that are going to consume your goods or services? Who are the prospects that you need to create whatever your story needs to be to attract them to your brand? Have you identified that person? Have you identified their pain points, their struggles, and what you're going to bring to the table that helps them out? And are they investing in your products? Or are they investing in you? There's a big difference there. When you have an investor that is looking to invest with you, are they investing in your product or do you think they're investing in you? That's a question. It means I'm looking for an answer.
Both.
Right, and you. So here we go. What's that?
It must be a bit of both.
It's a little bit of both, but let's say if you had a great product and they think you're a jerk,
Exactly.
right?
Well, this same applies also, doesn't it? If it's a, you're amazing. But
And the product's bad, absolutely. But here's what happens sometimes, if you're amazing, they may say, you know what, this product's a little off. Come back to the table when you're ready. You know, you may have that secondary, you may or may not, but you don't want to be a jerk. I'm going to use a different word, but I'm not going to watch my language because sometimes I get myself in trouble. So you got to understand how your prospects make decisions. And the scenarios, do they make decisions with emotions or do they make it based on logic? Who says logic by show of hands? One. Anybody else? You want to join the logic hand? Two logic. Anyone else? Statistically speaking, 3, 4. Man, look at that. I just push it and I get more people to go for logic. Statistically speaking, 80% of our decisions are based on emotions. If you want to know about a logical creature, go watch Star Trek. Look at Spock or look at David. That's probably a pretty good representation of someone who's on, who does things on logic. But here's the trick that happens in our minds. We believe we're making decisions based on logic, but in reality, we're basing it on emotions, and then we justify it with logic 80% of the time. Statistically speaking, this study has been done over and over again. They keep coming up with the same figures, and about 80% of our decisions.
For investors or for everything?
Say that one more time.
For investors specifically?
So in the Psychology Today magazine article, they didn't break it up. They just said people.
Okay.
When people make decisions, they're making those decisions based on emotions. Does that make sense there?
Yeah.
So as it pertains to investors, they didn't break it up. So I'm not going to make up a figure just to pull something out. I'm like, yeah, statistically speaking, people. But what it states are, what it says is that people are emotional creatures, right? Even if that's the case, they're emotional creatures. They're going to look at the data. They got to make sure you've got a solid project. There is no question about that, right? But you have to understand that there's going to be some emotion involved in that process whatsoever, because they may, depending on their own motivations, right? So you have to understand that as you're putting your messaging together. Otherwise, I'm afraid you just may be more noise, because chances are, if you're pitching a product to an investor, is it fair to say that someone else is pitching a product to that same investor? Is that a fair statement? Yeah. And is it also fair to say that there's someone else and someone else and someone else? Does that make sense there? They're getting pitches from a wide variety of people. So understanding, hey, am I going to come in with the same type of messaging as everyone else, which is usually filled with facts and figures, but if I can bring some emotion into it because I understand their pain points or struggles, even understanding that other people are doing the exact same thing, it may give you the advantage to create a messaging that's just slightly different, designed to resonate with them. Does that make sense there? And that's designed so you're not more noise. And here's an interesting tool, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Abraham Maslow said that when we make decisions, even investors, we have needs that need to be met when we make decisions. And if we look at this pyramid, there's a hierarchy of needs. The needs at the bottom of the pyramid are a stronger motivator than the top of the pyramid. So if we look at the bottom of the pyramid, and what he also says is there is no or very little concern in regards to needs being met above the pyramid, higher in the pyramid, if lower in the pyramid needs have not been met. So let's talk about physiological needs to give you an example. Physiological needs are the needs that need to be met to keep us alive. If you've ever found yourself gasping for air, swimming in a pool or in the ocean or wherever it may be, if you're gasping for air, that's a physiological need. Can you relate to that? I mean, that's one of those things that can take you back that you finally grasp for air and you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. Well, those needs need to be met. Chances are for most people in the United States and Western civilization, our physiological needs are met. The next strongest needs are safety needs. Do I feel safe, secure, employment? Do I have revenue coming in? Then there's love and belonging to a tribe, esteem, and then self-actualization. So if you think about presenting your messaging to an audience, understanding what needs need to be met. Sometimes with investors, it could be esteem, right? If it's a seasoned investor that says, I want the next big thing. But let's say if it's someone that is investing in your project and they don't have as deep of pockets, maybe there's a safety need that needs to be met. You know what I mean? So understanding and creating messaging that's designed to resonate with the needs are going to be extremely important. If you don't do it, once again, you risk being just more noise. Also, by creating a compelling story, it will put you in a position to where it puts you in a position where you are a there is no B proposition. Meaning, let's say if I'm an investor and I'm looking to invest in your project or your project, right? You're A, you're B. And, well, let me go back here. And if the messaging is solid, and I can only invest in one of the two projects, right? If you're A and you're B, if you're messaging and you're not just your messaging, you got to have a good product and you're a good person, all this other stuff, right? But it's by having a solid foundation in regards to your messaging that's designed to broadcast on what station?
What's in it for me?
What's in it for WIIFM? It could potentially put you in the position to where you are a there is no B. I want to be in your project so bad that there is no B for me. There is no B. You're out. Man, you don't think you're coming here to be out already, right? You're out. No. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, but that's where you want to be, and that's where you have to think about what can you do that's just to spend a little extra time to where you are a there is no B proposition. It's not always about facts and figures. It's the emotion. It's like how your product is going to impact them along their journey. So who are your investors, right? You got to understand if you're going to create a story, if you're going to create a narrative, this could easily say who are your customers, who are your prospects, who are your whatever that fill in the blank is, right? You have to identify who they are in terms of demographics. But then what are their motivations? Remember the Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Are you looking to attract an audience that is looking to fulfill a safety need or a love and belonging need or an esteem need? You need to understand that in regards to what you're looking to accomplish, because these are elements you're going to put into your story. Am I making sense? Yes. And oftentimes when people go to create story, they miss this. They want to jump right over it. And now they have a story that's less compelling. Then you want to understand and incorporate into your story, what pain have they experienced from others? Is it fair to say that if someone invested in a project, do you think there's been some projects that have been successes, but some that have been failures? Understanding some of the failure projects that they've been into. And you don't have to know the specific project, but understanding those emotions, being able to put that into your story, letting them know that you get it. You're not that. This isn't going to be that same path. So understanding what pain they've experienced from others and what joy they've gotten from others, because they've probably had highs and lows as it pertains to the projects. Also understanding what are their triggering events. What would trigger them to want to invest in your project versus another project? Why today? Why not a year from now? Why not a year ago? What are some potential triggering events you can incorporate into your story? What are their action beliefs? So as an investor, if you're going to put yourself in their shoes, what do they hope to accomplish by investing in your project? It's not always about money. It's not always about money. For some investors, it is. Some, there's a lot of different motivations, but what's their inaction belief? But also incorporating into your story their inaction belief. What do they believe will happen if they don't invest in your product, in your project, if they don't take action? Understanding that. Also, figuring out what are they hearing, what are they being told by others in this space as it pertains to you and what you're bringing to the market or other projects that are competing with yours. What are they seeing out there? What are they doing about it? And this is something that's also big. What gives you the authority to bring something, your product, your goods, your services to the market? Do you have credibility? What gives you the authority? And then why should they trust you? It's not just because have got a great disposition. What gives you the authority and why they should trust you? That should be incorporated into your story. You see, because they have questions and you need to provide those answers. They may not ask the questions, but they have the questions. And if you're able to incorporate those elements into your story, you're able to answer them. If not, you're just not ready. And I'm sorry to say there is no magic pill. You got to do the work. I know you wanted the magic pill, but there is no magic pill for it. And those are the elements that I go over in the world's best buyer persona, but it doesn't stop there. I'm going to take it another couple of moments, and I'm going to have some pre-exercises that you can do. I see a few of you with phones. That's going to help you. When you build out your persona, one of the things that's absolutely key, and that's extremely important, is that you think about something like this in terms of the marketing. Well, how much time do I have?
You're still good. You got 10 minutes if you'd like, but
10 minutes?
then we can have additional questions.
Additional questions? Okay. So here's what happens. I'm going to show you a QR code here in a second. Don't take a picture so you can come back to it, but let me explain what this is. When you have a compelling story, which by the way, by both growth best by persona helps you with your character development. So this way you can read a different story. It helps you answer the questions that I posed to you in the earlier screens. But then what happens is you can do a self-assessment. And I'm going to give you a free tool that I'll walk you through on video to guide you through this self-assessment. And where you can rate yourself in terms of 8 areas. Because once you put your story together, you got to take action. Is that a fair statement? Raise your hand if you got to take action. Everyone, just about everyone's got to take action, right? But you rate yourself in these 8 categories. The first category is awareness. If you're looking for an investor or you're looking for whatever that blank was, are they aware of you? If they were looking for you, if they don't know you, how would you rate yourselves there, right? And on a scale of 1 to 5. If you rate yourself a 5 on any of these categories, what you're saying is that you're a rock star. No one does that better than me. If you rate yourself a 1, it's non-existent. I haven't got there yet. It's not started, or whatever I'm doing is not working. 2, you're saying you're below average. 3, you're saying, I'm probably average, 4 above average. Does that make sense? But now what happens is once you have your story, you've got your character development, you can rate yourself in terms of awareness. Then you can rate yourself what you got going on in terms of engagement. And by the way, what I'm giving you here, this little wheel here, you'll get more out of this than you'll get 2 years out of marketing class at any university in the country. I kid you not. This wheel. Because what happens is once you rate yourself on awareness, then you rate yourself on engagement. Are people engaging with whatever I'm giving them to engage with? Videos, blog posts, emails, whatever, right? Then you can rate yourself on a self-assessment in terms of lead generation. Are you generating the leads that you want? From there, conversion optimization. Are your leads converting into customers? There's something called wow. Once they become customers, do you have a process that wows them, that makes them feel more incredible and more committed to your brand? Customer ladder. Do you have a process that helps you take what my definition of a customer ladder is? Customers to clients. Customers does business with you once. A client will think of you first when they need your goods and services again. So do you have a process that takes more of your customers to clients? But it doesn't stop there. Do you have a process that takes more of your clients to advocates? You see, advocates will tell others about your goods and services. And it doesn't stop there. Do you have a process that takes more of your advocates to become raving fans? You see, raving fans are the best. They're like free employees. They're at dinner parties telling people about your brand. Do you have a process in place? Reviews, testimonials. Do you have them? That's going to be important. And then referrals. You can rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. You end up with this marketing wheel. Once you have the marketing wheel in place, you have the ability of putting remember the 3 elements of that puzzle? You can put your documented journey, your strategy in place for any one of these categories. You can figure out the tools and tactics for any of these categories, and then you can figure out what your definition of success is. Does that make sense? It makes marketing way more manageable than this whole thing just called marketing. It allows you to get your message across to whoever you need to get your message across to. So here's the deal. If you scan this QR code, if you don't have your phone, just write down outsmarttools.com. At the very top of the page, there's going to be an exercise. It's going to take you 15 minutes to do it. Don't do it now. You can do it on your own. And the cool thing is I got videos there where I'll walk you through the questions you need to answer. Does that make sense? And you can do your own self-audit. After you do your self-audit, I'm going to send you an email. And there may be 2 emails that come, but one gives you your results. Then the next one is a Google spreadsheet. And the Google spreadsheet becomes this cool living and breathing document that creates your marketing wheel for you. So this way you can figure out what you need to do, how you need to do it, so you can take your story and your whatever you got going on to the next level using this exercise. Also on that page, there's some other tools, but that's the gift that I have for you. And it looks like this. You'll just click the free marketing wheel exercise. It will take you 15 minutes to complete it. And I'm guiding you through on video. And by doing that, it allows you to figure out what your playbook should look like for each of these categories, regardless of what you're doing. You see, once you have your story, which is the hub of your wheel, if you have a better story, do you think that will help you improve your awareness to whoever you want to improve your awareness with? If you have a better story and you know more about your audience, do you think that's going to give you the ability of having better engagement? Generate more leads, convert more of them? Absolutely. It starts with the hub of the wheel. And what it's designed to do is give you that predictability, the trust, the profitability, and even equally as important, eliminate these squirrels. from ever entering your life because you have some sort of a framework to follow and no distractions. And those are concepts that are within the book, The World's Best Buyer Persona System. But here's what I wanted to take with you today. We've gone over a few elements here. And let's imagine for just a second, this is you sitting on the top of this mountain, and your definition of success, your pot of gold, whatever it may be, is sitting on top of this mountain. Oftentimes when I'm sitting down, I'm consulting with organizations, I do this inventory audit of what I call half-built bridges. There's a strong possibility that each and every one of you in attendance today has some half-built bridges. These are projects that you've started. Maybe you headed down a path of doing something with social media or marketing or messaging or whatever. And you have this inventory of half-built bridges. Raise your hand if you can think of a project or that you have some half-built bridges, right? If you've been in business, you got some half-built bridges. But oftentimes what happens is, what I don't want you to do is leave here today and start off with another half-built bridge. Say, man, I got to do the story. Let me go add another half-built bridge to the story. Maybe you learned something today that allows you to complete one of those bridges. Oftentimes those bridges are 80, 90% complete. It doesn't take that much energy and effort. Complete the bridge. Use that bridge to give you the strength to come back across the bridge, back and forth. That helps your overall messaging, that helps your overall marketing, it helps your overall stories. That's probably the most important element that I have for you today. So once again, that gets you to your pot of gold. You can scan this QR code. You can, let me just put this back up here. I went too long. You can scan this QR code and you have it over at outsmarttools.com. With that being said, one last question, and I'm going to put it for Q&A. Did you learn something today that will help you create a better story? Yes. Yes? 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 Okay. Then, with that being said, I can open for Q&A. We got time for that?
We do.
Okay, we got time for Q&A.
Yeah. Anybody online that's got questions, just throw them in the chat.
It's going to make it easy for me. I'm going to go sit down here and do something. You know, maybe no questions. There's got to be some questions in the room. Remember, I still have a pocket full of participation trophies here. Okay, there we go.
Trying to find the path between Aigras.
Okay, I can throw it. Okay, there. And remind me, I got to tell you a story about these ships here in just a second. Okay.
So as you were telling the story about that and that and that, and I couldn't, and I think somebody was asking, like, who is that? To me, like, it wasn't 100% clear, like, who is that? Is it the investor? Is it the users? Or who is it? Because I can, if I understood correctly who it was, then I can maybe, by having a mental model, I can absolutely understand sort of my path of success and understand it.
That requires two chips. So let's talk about who them is. Because them is yes and yes. Your users are a them and your investors are a them. Both of them are going to, you need to create a different story for both of them. You see, what's going to motivate your users? And what type of product do you have? Is it SaaS? SaaS, okay. So you got a SaaS product. Your users have different motivations. They have different action beliefs. They have different inaction beliefs than your investors. Is that a fair statement?
Very much.
So if you're going to create a story for investors, and let's say if you were to plaster that all over the front of your website, the users of your products going to come to your website, they're like, what is this? It's not designed, it's not going to connect with them. So when I talk about the them is whoever your audience is, and you can't put all your audience into the same bucket. So you're going to have a bucket where you're going to create a story that's designed to resonate with your investors. You're going to have a story that's going to resonate and connect with your users. You're going to have a different story that you're going to build and resonate with people that you want to hire or partner with, because they're all going to be listening to a different station, a different WIIFM. So when you go through the worksheets, it's not uncommon that when we build out personas for organizations, we're sitting there building multiple personas, because each one of them have to have their own story. The days of having this message that you want to create that connects and resonates with everyone doesn't exist. Because if you create a message that's designed to resonate with everyone, who does it connect with? No one. You can't do it. And that's what I meant by when I went to the magic pill. It does take a little bit of work, but it pays off dividends. Because when you start figuring out their pain points, their issues, their triggering events, what they're seeing in the market, what their motivations are, whether you decide to put a message on social media for your users, you should get more engagement. And whether you decide to put a pitch deck together for investors, it should resonate with them. Did that answer that question?
It did, like, there were questions.
Okay. Go.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, the fine tuning, it's like, the way I think about it is a pitch for the enterprise clients and a pitch for small, medium businesses. It's really similar, but it's now, you know,
Well, let's look at it.
I realize I have to do it a little different.
You do, and let's say, let's just take an enterprise client, right? Let's take an enterprise client or a small business or whoever. Who is, businesses don't make decisions, it's people. And this is about people to people. So let's say the enterprise client, who's making the decision? Maybe it's the VP of marketing, right? Or I don't know, the VP of business development, whoever. Well, that person's gonna have a certain motivation, and maybe their motivation is all about safety. They can't blow this. I'm gonna drop a 7-figure contract into your software platform, and if this goes wrong, they're gonna put my ass out in the streets. May not be true, but that may be what he's thinking. On the other hand, an enterprise client, that decision is made by the founder of the company. He's not concerned about being put out in the streets, but he knows that this is going to give him better positioning in the marketplace where it could be more of an esteem play. Does that make sense? They're two totally different messaging, because if you go that esteem play to that person that's worried about safety, I don't want to get thrown in the streets, it's not going to resonate.
Yeah, no, perfect, because the startup client is gonna be willing to take a chance because he wants to be an early mover, because it's gonna help him get into his market quicker.
Absolutely.
The enterprise guy who's super conservative, executive, C-level, B-level, you know, whatever, he's gonna be way more conservative. He's not looking for the home run. The startup needs the home run.
Absolutely. And it's understanding those motivations are key, because it's a different message. So maybe it's the path. Are you a startup? Go here, go down this path. Here's the messaging I got for you. Are you something else? You can send them down a different path.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, that's.
Story, real quick, we got a couple of people on.
Go for it.
Okay, Stormie. We have a couple of questions that were in chat or in the Q&A, and from Adrian, she's wondering if you tailor the message, which is what you were just saying, to the different audiences. She's asking, what is the framework to differentiate those different audiences? And I told her I would ask you to speak more about customer personas, because every audience is a different persona.
Yep.
And then we have another question that's about, do you craft a story for different lengths of time?
Do I craft a story for a different length of time? So let's answer the first question. So there is a worksheet, as a matter of fact, and you have on the outsmarttools.com, there is a worksheet for buyer personas. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to grab, because I happen to bring a couple with me. I may have enough for everyone here to take one with them. But what happens, I'm going to hold this up here. Here's a worksheet. I don't know, can you guys see this? Probably not.
Not super well.
Okay, well, inside that link on outsmarttools.com, there's something that says download worksheets for the world's best buyer persona. You can download the worksheets. And what happens is, now I'm forgetting the question, you can go through a process of completing this worksheet for each and every one of your personas. So this way you can clarify them. And what I recommend doing is give your personas a fun name. So some of the personas that we've created before is like Business Owner Bob, Compassionate Christina, Leisure Suit Larry, even though we didn't invent that one. There was a video game for that. But it's a fun name that gives you an idea of what that person's all about. So we do have a free tool and resource and some videos to help you create your buyer personas. Did I answer that first question or not?
Yes, she is thanking you.
So the second question, how long your story should be?
Am I still on? Okay, sorry, we're having technical difficulties.
Okay.
You can add a personality, like you have angel investor Sam, and then you can have Sharky investor VC.
Yes.
Yes. Because those are different audiences.
Absolutely. And then once you have those types of personas create it, it allows you to create a distinct message to both of them. Because can you imagine trying to create the same message to resonate with those two? Because the names that you just gave, it gave a lot about their personality. Does that make sense? Once you stick Sharky in the name, okay, you know what I mean? But you would create a separate persona for both of them. So this way you have the ability of having greater empathy, greater trust. You get into rapport faster. They need their own personas. And the other question that I didn't answer yet is how long the story should be. The answer to that is however long it needs to be. There is, because when you create your persona, the persona isn't the story, it's the character development. So how long does your messaging need to be to get your point across with it being as short as possible? And I don't know if that really made any sense, because you don't want to ramble on forever, but it all depends on the motivation of your persona, the messaging that you're looking to get across. What we've done with some clients, we'll create a persona, and then there's a campaign where we're giving bits and pieces of the persona throughout whatever the campaign happens to be, hoping that something there resonates, bring them back to wherever we want them to bring them back to, and let them take a deeper dive on their own. Does that make sense? And did I answer the questions? Or that question?
Yeah. Yes, Stormy. I think if they think of it in terms of there's a stick figure, but once you put clothes on it or you flesh it out, you have different lengths of stories because it takes longer to build those characters. But the message for each audience will be the same. It's just how many more details can you add, or how much more interesting can you make it with a longer story.
Exactly, and you may adjust the story based on the person's motivations, and that's one of those things that's absolutely key. It's understanding their motivations, so this way it helps you align your messaging to their WIIFM. But I love the analogy with the stick figure and the clothes. I'm gonna steal that.
Oh, please do. And I would say from our perspective for founders, you need to be able to get it to 3 sentences to tell people what you do. But to really hook them in, it's going to take longer than 3 sentences. So 3 sentences, you should be able to pique their interest, but a 2-minute elevator pitch, you should be able to put a little bit of meat on that bone. But the idea there is just to get them to want to hear more.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail right on the head when it comes to, if you're sharing someone what you do or what you're bringing to market, your goal should be is to get them to ask, or get them to say, tell me more. If they don't say, tell me more, you've probably given too much information. What can you say that gives a reasonable representation in terms of what you do, that piques enough interest, that gets them to want to say, oh, that's interesting, tell me more. Because now you have the permission to give a few more details. Does that align?
That is absolutely correct. It's just like the first meeting that you have with an investor. The whole purpose is to get to the next meeting, because they're not going to give you money in the first meeting.
That's absolutely correct. There's a sequence. There's a book by Desmond Morris called Human to Human, and it talks about the 12 stages of intimacy. And it goes through it goes through the 12 stages of intimacy, and like stage 1 is eye to eye, right? Stage 2 is like voice to voice. Stage 3, eye to body, and then it goes all the way through the 12th stage, which is some bow chicka wow wow, right? Is the 12th stage of human intimacy. And the scenario is often when it comes to business is that when we go through, if we miss too many of those stages in the real world, you're charged with assault. You can't miss those stages. In business, it's the same thing. If you meet someone today and 5 minutes later, I'm asking for your hand in marriage, there's a problem. There's something off and that's wrong with me, right? There are stages of human intimacy. And with business, it's not 8 areas. It's not 12 areas. It's really the 8 in part of the marketing wheel. We talk about that, but it's basically you can't skip steps. It's about building a relationship, building trust, and then eventually getting to the marriage down the road a piece. If you're asking for the marriage when you first meet someone, that's a problem.
Questions from the room?
Yeah, what's the story of Yokel Local?
So Yokel Local started in 2000.
That's true. Is that book
What's that? Oh, so in 2010, I met my business partner, Daryl. Well, in fact, I'm going to give you the longer version. I used to be in the home building industry. I was this what I thought this hotshot sales manager, and sales where we were crushing it. And then the owner of the company said, Stormie, I want you to become our VP of sales and marketing. Had no marketing experience, right? And I'm like, I've got this. I'm a badass, right? But when I took that job, I realized that I knew nothing about marketing. My hair went gray almost instantaneously overnight. I remember experiencing pains that I never experienced before because my head was hurting. Because this was in the early 2000s, there was this thing called the internet that was coming on board. So it wasn't just about putting up billboards and newspaper ads. And I knew nothing about the internet. And I was sitting there and I would hire some young whippersnapper to build a website and some other one to do there was different terminology then, but the equivalency of, let's say, SEO, there was no social media at the time, another doing some paid ads. But the problem was I was totally ignorant. I had multiple people helping me as it pertained to marketing, and every time something went wrong, they would point fingers at the other. And I had no idea who to hold accountable because I was ignorant on the topic. Does that make sense? Eventually, I met my business partner, Daryl. At that time, the housing market crisis hit Las Vegas, and we were in the center of it. I had lots of friends and family members that they were losing their businesses and losing their jobs. I was fortunate enough to have a job, but I didn't like it. Even though I was making good money as VP of a mortgage banker, Daryl was a high-producing loan officer. And what I noticed was every time I would do any kind of search online, he would show up on the top of Google. And I thought that was pretty impressive because I could never do it. And I had a hell of a lot more money to do it than he did. So I knew that this guy was pretty damn smart, a hell of a lot smarter than me. I had to meet him. He blew me off for about a year. I parlayed some friendships. We became friends. And the housing crisis was even ravaging Las Vegas even more. And I shared, Daryl started training me in this thing called internet marketing. He told me some people I needed to follow and learn from. And I shared that information with another friend of mine. I'm like, hey, Matt, I've learned this stuff about internet marketing. I think I can help people. A week later, he shows up with 2 checks. One was a company called Sambalate, a local coffee shop here in town. And the other was a local Geico agency. And also here in town. And what I learned worked. And I'm like, hey, this stuff works. We can start a business, which was part of the plan. Now, the word yokel, that word means, or one of the definitions of yokel, is if you're lost and you find yourself in unfamiliar territory, you're lost, you're scared, you're terrified. If you find a yokel, they understand the local landscape better than anyone else out there. They can lead you to safety. So that's where the name Yokel came from. We started as a local internet marketing company, henceforth Yokel Local. Now, taking a step further, when I started Yokel Local, for the first couple of weeks, it was just me. Or the first month, it was just me. But then I realized I was in over my head. I started training, but I was a one-trick pony. I needed to get my buddy Daryl involved because he was the smartest person that I knew. So I went to Daryl and I'm like, Daryl, you've got to join me. I know you hate the mortgage industry. We can do a lot of good for these businesses in Las Vegas. Some of them are really, really hurting. They just don't know what to do. And based on my experience in the home building industry of having all these different people pointing fingers at, it sucked. I didn't like being in that position. So let's create a company that if things go right, we get a thumbs up. But if things go wrong, there's one person to point a finger at. Let's be that company because that company didn't exist back then. Henceforth, Yokel Local was born since 2010. I think we now have we now have employees all over the country, and we also have international employees also. So that's the story, probably more than what you asked for, but I wanted to give you the whole story.
Stories real quick. There's folks online asking about, maybe if you name off that book again. What was that book you were talking about?
The one from Desmond Morris or my book? There was 2. There was 2. I'll give you both. Human Intimacy by Desmond Morris. It talks about the 12 stages of human intimacy. That's a book. And then my book is The World's Best Buyer Persona System. Both of those are available wherever you buy your books.
All right, well, I'll put those in the link. Other questions from the room? So your buyer persona would be local businesses?
No, the buyer persona, we've used it for large international companies, local businesses, because what happens is, even though we started as a local internet marketing company, we all have companies all different shapes and sizes. We should probably change our name, but we built a pretty decent, a pretty good reputation where people just know us as the Yokel guys, the Yokel Local guys. But the buyer persona It's for people. So you do business with people. If people are involved in the decision-making process, that's what the buyer persona is for. It's about understanding them with greater clarity than anyone else. So this way you can create messaging to connect with them at a level that your competitors just aren't at. Does that make sense?
I have a question. So when you're in front of investors, regardless if it's angel or VC, so you said earlier that probably the same company have different concept, but you know they've been pitched many times, right?
Sure.
So what is something like we need to focus on? Because we always wanted to, you know, to relate to give our messaging to investors, right? What is one thing that they would say like, wow, there's something different or something new? Do we focus on our strength? Do we focus on the business? Or is it much more relatable? Like, you know, you said decisions are made based on emotion. So do we go emotional or logic, metrics or?
Well, that's where the power of the buyer persona, that process comes in, because you're spending a lot more information, you're spending a lot more time, energy, and effort determining their motivations, their needs, their wants, their desires, their trigger events, what they're seeing in the market, what they're doing, what they're not doing, their action beliefs. You're spending the time, energy, and effort on them. This way, it gives you the ability of creating messaging that's designed to connect with them. Does that make sense there? And it's so much difficult to do. And that's where that magic, that's another place where the magic pill comes in. There's not a one size fits all. In some instances, for some personas, it may be this. Other personas, it's that. But that's why when you go through the process, it gives you the unique ability to help determine what you should be focusing on. But here's another important component when it comes to that type of system. Have you ever done business with someone that you didn't like?
Yes.
And in the world of investing, having an investor that has the money that's controlling, basically in the businesses I've been in, I've had scenarios to where owners of organizations had investors, that some of those relationships were absolutely incredible. Some weren't, for a variety of reasons, right? So by being able to craft a buyer persona, the other thing it's designed to do is designed to help you craft and create messaging that's designed to help you connect with people you want to do business with, because they're typically going to have similar values and similar belief systems as you start creating this messaging, while at the same time simultaneously repelling the people you really don't want to have as part of your organization. Does that make sense there? It's designed to give that type of clarity. There's no right or wrong answer. The person that you absolutely don't want involved with your organization is the very person that the next person absolutely wants involved with the organization. Does that make sense there? And that's, so did I answer it?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we can have her question, because this is my big question. I worked in my industry for a long time, 14 years. So I know my buyer personas, I can fill out all the worksheets. I've done 14 years of research basically. I've never worked with an investor in my life, and all of them are different. And so when I go into a meeting and I have my pitch deck, I've gotten on my website, I've looked at the other companies I've invested in, I've done my best research, and I will get completely thrown for a loop 5 minutes into the conversation. They're like, oh no, we're not interested at all. Or I had one guy telling me that he was really, really interested, and on the second call, he said, I'm actually building a very similar company and would be your competitor.
Wow.
So like, the buyer persona, because I've read books on buyer persona, and I love like coming up with new ideas like you have of how to attack it. But I'm kind of at a loss for how to do my due diligence on investors specifically, which is probably why I'm part of this program, of people maybe in this room who don't, like if you don't already work closely with investors in your life, it's really difficult to go, what do they need? Like, what is it that's going to motivate them, excite them about what I'm doing? I know what motivates my customer. I built a whole business around it. But
right.
The investor part of it, well, I'm like, well, $1 billion would excite them, but that's not exactly what I'm trying to build. And so it's really hard for me to find the right investor, because I have a hard time figuring out who exactly that person is who would be the most interested in, be benefited the most by my specific company.
Okay?
I guess like that's a long-winded question, but.
No, I think and I can just tell you, I've had organizations, not dealing with investors, but I've had organizations say a very similar sentiment, what you shared with me, with whoever their ideal person is. And I've had organizations that very similar statements. I've built personas and I've done this. And I challenge them, go do the exercise, prove me wrong. On this particular system, prove me wrong. But let me tell you what the world's best buyer persona system is not. When it comes to the buyer persona system is designed to give you a fictional representation of who your ideal investor is. It's a fictional representation. Their needs, their motivations, their wants, their desires. And it's designed to help you craft messaging to attract the fictional representation of the person you want to do business with in regards to their emotions and their needs and their desires. There's and when it's done effectively, it tends to work to attract those people when you're presenting the messaging based on that in regards to your character development. But it also tends to work when it repels the others, which you may see as, oh, this is a loss, but in some cases that may not be that person you wanted to do business with. Does that make sense there?
Yes.
Because all money, in my opinion, all money isn't good money, right? If it's going to be a relationship with an investor, my belief is it should be a beautiful, supportive relationship. It's a marriage. You're getting married in some cases. So it's designed to attract the investor that you're looking to attract and repel the one you're not.
Flipping it kind of. So what you're saying is you're making the message to attract the right type of message. Well, that message is going to fall flat on some investors because they're not the right one for you.
And that's exactly what it's supposed to do.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's really helpful.
Okay, cool.
Stormie, if I may, that we do a lot of that. So I'm happy to have a conversation with you, and we already have a number of classes are about kind of that raising capital, what pre-seed, and just going on Series A companies. So that's something that Startup and Economics Resource for. Stormie is an excellent communicator, knows how to communicate those things. But of course, we're another tool. That's why we want to bring Stormie in and give us a comment on it, but also have that conversation on that as well.
And Stormie, I have a question for you. Just so that the audience understands that creating customer personas or audience personas is not like a 5-minute exercise and that it's not done when you finish the first round. Can you just talk more about the whole process?
Yes, it's certainly not a 5-minute exercise. If you are really good, I'm really good at building personas. If I were to sit down and build a persona with an organization, it will probably take us a half day to a full day. And I've done tons of these, right? And and I don't need to read the information in the book, right? I've done a lot of them, but typically the exercise will probably take a minimum of 3 to 4 hours if we have a basic persona. But here's what happens once you start the process. It's designed to be this living, breathing document because your knowledge, as you start building out the persona and start building out that narrative and that story, typically you'll expand upon it because your knowledge of that person is going to increase, much more so a year from now and a month from now, but it increases. So it's one of those scenarios that you can always update and modify your persona moving forward. And you should have multiple personas. The second one is definitely easier than the first. And
How so? How is it easier?
Because you've learned the exercises. You know, and it's just like anything else. When you build your first persona, you're going to be thinking because you just don't, you know, the book and the worksheets are designed to walk you through a process. Well, the first time you do the exercise, you've got to read the instructions because you don't know what to do to fill in the blanks. The second time, you've already been there. You know what I mean? You don't necessarily need the instructions again because you've already gone through the process that's designed to help you along the thought process.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good information. Logan, you want to take it away?
Yeah, do you have any other questions in the room at all? Well, we'll have one more question and then we'll start together. Well, we can have one or two, but we can start to wrap this up. You gentlemen back there.
Similar to her, doing 10 years of experience in research. My my company actually, or my DIY project actually pivoted thanks to persona development.
Okay,
But my persona development, it wasn't my way of doing this exercise, but it was my way of doing one-on-one interviews with actual people. So it was more of a factual persona development
Yep.
and then fictional persona development. Do you talk much about
so the gold standard,
yeah,
the gold standard is factual. Speaking to your customers, having a group of your ideal customers in the room. So that is the gold standard, but oftentimes, a lot of people don't have the ability of doing that or putting that together. But when the world's best buyer persona exercise comes into play in those types of environments, it helps with the types of questions that should be asked. So the world's best buyer persona is you either use it with your actual customers to help guide you through the questions to build out the persona, but when you don't have that luxury, you have to use your best resources and information that you have. So when I'm doing it with an organization and they don't have the ability of us putting a focus group together, we'll ask for participants from multiple departments. Give us someone from sales, give us someone from customer service, give us the different departments that are customer facing because they will all have a different perspective. Does that make sense? But the customer is absolutely 100% the best route. And then you use this type of worksheet to help guide you through the questions.
Awesome.
which leads to, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
which leads to the data that backs up sort of your product or your idea, and which I think a lot of the investors really do to look for.
Absolutely.
I would assume that if you have really good qualitative data, then they're like, this is great, I love it, it makes sense on paper, I'm in. But then if you're building a fictional persona, then I think we may have not sort of missed the key there for the data component. And I think I'm gonna try to tie it into at what point do we, I think several folks have kind of alluded to that, at what point do we speak about the right data as part of the story to bring them in, and then because I think the data really does speak a lot to the investors. And
Absolutely.
Right.
So remember that the persona really isn't designed to be a database. You know, we think of it as it's really the combining of the art and science. The persona is designed to help you craft the messaging to deliver the data in a more effective way to their benefit, not yours. Did that make sense?
Real quick,
Quick question, I'm thinking in two areas.
Brody,
We're trying to find a CEO, are we looking for someone that we can teach this persona to for marketing and innovation so that they can tailor that to the 4 different markets that we're looking to reach? Or are we trying to create a fictional character and market that?
I don't know if I understand your question.
When
You're looking to hire a CEO.
You know, when you're talking about persona, so we can hire someone, we can coach them on exactly what they need to do.
Correct.
Are you saying that's a better route to go with the persona, teaching someone how to distribute that message, or a fictional story that doesn't attribute itself to a real human being? Does that make any sense in where I'm going with this?
I don't know.
tell you what, we're gonna actually, because we got some folks on my agenda.
We can circle back afterwards.
Yeah, we're gonna be here.
I wanna answer.
Maggie, Jeff, to you guys, I appreciate you guys in the room, but we're gonna be here for a few more minutes after we close things up. And, you know, I'm happy to, you know, Stormie's here, I'm here for a little while, we can get you a little bit more. But Jeff, Maggie, back to you guys real quick.
Terrific. Thanks, Logan. And thanks so much, Stormie, for coming out tonight. And I can tell you, I am one of those investor personas that Stormie's talking about. I do a lot of it, usually through 2 or 3 or 4 investments every quarter. So one of the reasons I wanted Stormie to talk about personas and storytelling is it's frustrating when I'll just say it's so much of a pleasure when an entrepreneur, a founder, or a group of founders really has their story down, right? They're telling the story about their journey as an entrepreneur, bringing the user character into the story. and painting a picture of what the future looks like that's compelling, where I want to know more. And then I want to know, yeah, I do want to know about the financials, but I don't want to know about that in that first 1 or 2 minutes that I'm talking about that. Maybe you touch on how big the total market is, but those things typically come later in the pitch deck, which is a longer story, and you have time to do those kinds of things. So I think, a lot of these tools and things that Stormie's given us tonight are the building blocks of the several different versions of the story that you have, the very short one, the middle-sized one, and the longer one that has all the data. So Stormie, thanks so much for coming out with us tonight and showing us your wisdom. And and I think the folks in the room there in Vegas are going to get to stick around and do a little bit more, do a little bit more networking and talking. We have a list of these events that are occurring between now and the middle of January. The next one that we have is next week. Next week at this time, 5:30. Logan is going to run through some of the rest of the logistics for you. But I want to, again, say thanks to Stormie and thanks to everybody coming out tonight. So Logan, why don't you run people through the logistics before we wrap for tonight?
Yes, thanks, Stormie.
Yeah.
Good job. Great job.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Thanks everyone for attending online and you guys are in the room. So going forward, we're going to, for the next several weeks, there's going to be these recurring every Tuesday at 5:30 to 6:37. We're going to go and run through a number of courses that will dive into what investors are looking for. What are, raising capital 101. Now, I think we sent out an improper link earlier. We are going to be sending out a link not only to the recording of this to any who are in attendance and those online, so you can have this information. We'll be posting it to our YouTube channel as well. But we will all be sending out an updated link for those of you that need to attend online or those that are attending online for next week. We did have some trouble with that. We'll be sending that out. Of course, at the end of this event, the things that we really want to see, there's going to be a pitch competition that you are all welcome to enter into, encouraged to enter into as entrepreneurs. That will be concluded at the Angel Conference event in April. There will be a investment awarded to as many as 3 companies from our group of angels, and that's after the conclusion of this entrepreneurs boot camp. So of course, we're really excited to see all of you. We hope to see you all for all 12 events as they head up into conclusion in January. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have. We will be sending out links and video links as well. And feel free to stick around. Stormie and I will be here for a minute to chat with any of those. And again, thank you everyone attending online. Appreciate your participation, and we'll see you all next time.
And I just got to share something with you because it's never happened before. I just grabbed a stack of these as I walked out the door, and I didn't know how many I grabbed. I just grabbed them out. I counted the room twice because I happened to grab 13, and there's 13 people here. So I brought these exactly.
Thanks, everyone.